It's time to hang on, college football fans, because we are on the move here at the Voice of College Football. And why, even during the holidays? Yes, it's because college football players are on the move. And we will track them as best we can, get to the most important player movement and the rumblings out there, as Leanne likes to say, right here at the Voice of College Football with our On the Move show, as we update you on the transfer portal and recruiting. Leanne Herring, of course, right next to me. Leanne, how you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Like we said, today is officially December 23rd, so it is the start of the dead period for the transfer portal that will run through January 1st. Now, while we say this is the dead period, we know notoriously in recruiting, whether it's high school or transfer, that this is probably the time that while coaches can't host or call our teams and programs can't host in-person visits or host potential prospects from the transfer portal and whatnot, doesn't mean that there is not a ton going on. They can still communicate via social media messages, electronic communication, email, phone. They just can't make any person contact with athletes and athletes' families. So while that's on the hold, everybody gets a little bit of a break. The athletes, especially, like we said, especially during the transfer portal, it's just a really overwhelming time because we have to remember, Mark, we've seen it just in this is a very abrupt process versus going through the traditional high school recruiting. A lot of these players don't have a lot of time as far as to make visits, to make decisions. So this is a period that was created in hopes that it can kind of alleviate a little bit of the stress. Now, like I said, does it mean that anything dies down? Not really. It really, I believe, amps up, especially with those players that just made their current visits this past weekend that maybe haven't made a decision. It will, for programs especially that are wanting certain players, believe me, they will be on the horn through the Christmas holidays and so forth, trying to kind of feel out and try to still make connection, because this is also a time where a team that's maybe lagging behind can have the opportunity to kind of swoop in. We've seen it here plenty. Some of the commitments that we're going to be talking about here, we're just talking about kind of surprising, but yet not surprising. So let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get to one of the prized prospects that we've been tracking among a batch of wide receivers that are being coveted across the landscape of college football. And a lot of people out there outside the SEC don't realize that while Auburn's in the state of Alabama, it's just on the state line close to Georgia. So Eric Singleton almost staying in the state of Georgia, moving from Georgia Tech down to the Plains.
Yes, it looks like, and this is kind of where, he is the top portal wide receiver. He was a top portal player at one time. I believe he's regained that status, but regardless, this is a recruitment that has been very heavily watched. There was a lot of suitors, obviously, from the jump, but it looks like we said, and we kind of had said it early on, that this looks the direction from what we heard from our sources, that he would indeed be an Auburn Tiger. And long and behold, Eric Singleton, top portal wide receiver, is heading to the Plains to join Hugh Freeze. Obviously, we know what he's done as a Yellow Jacket. He had 56 receptions for 754 yards, 3 touchdowns during his sophomore season. And then obviously he had a standout freshman season during 2023, 48 receptions, 714 yards, 6 scores. For those of you like stats, when you put up his numbers, like I said, he is a production player. He's a speedy wide receiver, a great football IQ. It was no question when he hit the portal that plenty of suitors were going to be after him. But it looks like Hugh Freeze was able to close the deal and add an elite wide receiver that will add to his current commitments. Of course, Jackson Arnold, several other top guys, trying to rebuild that offense. Again, Auburn and LSU are 2 teams we talked about yesterday, Mark, that you can definitely see have been moving up the portal ranks and have really been making moves in the portal. I do believe it's also because the urgency, not only to rebuild the program with the not so stellar seasons that Auburn and LSU were coming off of, and also the urgency to, try to help not be in the hot seat if you're head coach. Obviously Hugh Freeze and Brian Kelly. So again, Auburn with a huge, huge monster pickup, and finally taking the number 1 wide receiver off the board, Eric Singleton.
Bo Pribula has been all over the map, going to places like Iowa and UCF and Ole Miss and elsewhere, but he's going to the SEC and Mizzou.
Yes, it looks like that's where he's going. Of course, he's coming off a visit off Ole Miss. We talked about possibly Central Florida coming in for a late play. Obviously, Indiana at one time was going to be the destination that a lot of people were thinking he might end. Obviously, after that Ole Miss visit, he ended up canceling that visit. We thought that maybe he would take a couple days after the holiday, but like they said, when you know, and it looks like that's exactly where he's heading. Of course, Mizzou looking to also, you know, beef up its offense, add some, much needed replacement, and this will be a strong fit, at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And Brady Cook, longtime Mizzou starting quarterback, moving on and entering the NFL draft. Bo Pribula in prime position to win the job this spring. Then we got Peyton Kirkland finally making his decision as well, the former four-star offensive lineman.
Yes, this is a guy who's no stranger to the transfer portal. Obviously, he started out at the University of Texas as a Longhorn, then transferred to Deion Sanders over in Colorado, and now he is going to be not at Miami, South Florida, but Miami, Ohio. He was a really high-profile recruit coming out of the 2023 class, Mark. He had over 50 offers. He was one of those kids that when you saw him, he had what you like to call rare measurables aside from his salary. A lot of people already said when recruiting him out of that 23 cycle, he had a lot of those measurables that NFL scouts were just drooling over, out of Dr. Phillips High School in Florida. However, he hasn't really had the opportunity at any of his stops to really make a mark. And, this transition we're seeing, for a high caliber player going from two high caliber programs heading to Miami, Ohio, Peyton Kirkland's definitely looking to see if he can finally find the right home where he can really make a strong push and a standout, to the way he was, recruited back in 2023. Again, a really high profile recruit. I think this is a monster get, obviously, from Miami, Ohio. Peyton Kirkland, star player, hasn't really had his chance to find his footing. So this may be the year that we finally see him break out after, key stops from Texas and Boulder.
This is a big week for Miami of Ohio out of the MAC. They've also made another move on a potential star for them.
Yes, another kid, Cordell Russell, another highly touted recruit, 6'4", 210, formerly out of North Mesquite, Texas. He was another highly touted recruit. He's also a former Colorado teammate of Peyton Kirkland, wide receiver. He's also heading to Miami, Ohio. This kid, was another speedy receiver, had a lot of offers coming out of high school and during his cycle. But the thing with him, another kid who's really had to battle and the injury bug and battle coming back from injuries. I think that now that he's had the potential to be healthy again, Shadar Sanders talked about him briefly, saying that this kid has a lot of potential, a lot of upside when he's healthy. Again, he really didn't have the opportunity to show that at Colorado. So again, another star player with a lot of potential, looking to finally have their breakout season. So Cordell Russell, former Colorado buff, four-star wide receiver out of North Mesquite, is also going to be joining Peyton Kirkland in Miami, Ohio, looking like I said, to finally dust off the injury plague and really get to work and looking to have a breakout season.
Shadrack Banks had a nice season at TCU 2 years ago. Only played 4 games this past season. Don't know if that must have been an injury situation. I'll have to check on that. But as a 2023 linebacker for the Horned Frogs, of course, just one season off of going to the national championship game, 62 tackles and 9 tackles for loss. But Shadrack Banks has found himself a new home.
He's not going too far, and I don't think he could affect a better place. This is a kid, like you said, had a monster season at TCU, also comes out of a really highly touted program that you've heard us mention, the North Shore Mustangs. When you see those kids that are developed there, Banks was one of those kids, and I expect that at UTSA, he will have a great opportunity not only to develop under Jay Traylor, notorious for player development. UTSA has done a great job producing and really helping a lot of these players build. And I think that's what we're seeing in the case of Banks. Again, I haven't really gone into detail as far as, like you mentioned, about whether his playing time at TCU down in Fort Worth obviously has kind of played into his movement. But nonetheless, I think this will be a great fit and a great home, not too far from Fort Worth. Again, Banks is heading to UTSA to become a Roadrunner.
Yeah, so we had an injury to Shadrach Banks sometime in early October, which sidelined him for the rest of the season after he had played those 4 games at TCU. But a big season in 2023, as you see right there, 62 tackles, 9 tackles for loss. Former Alabama wide receiver Emmanuel Henderson is heading outside the SEC.
Yes, again, this is another, like I said, we got some big time, big profile players, coming out of highly touted high school recruits. Haven't really seen action in some of the big programs. He's heading to Kansas. I haven't had a chance to look at his tape, but again, this is going to be, I think, a strong, big pickup with a lot of experience that Kansas is looking to rebuild in their wideout room.
Absolutely. And as we run down more commits coming down, 4-star Kent State edge Cameron Olds, he is heading to the SEC.
He is heading to the SEC, like you said. This is another 4-star edge, and I think this is going to be great for the Kentucky defense. We saw what the Kentucky defense could do against some high-profile teams within their SEC conference. Again, number 8 edge rusher heading to the Bluegrass, seeing what he can do for Mark Stoops. I really like this. This match. I really think that that Kentucky has the opportunity to really excel. Following Kentucky for as long as I have and watching them in their development, this is a program that really has been knocking on the door so many times. But again, they remain Jekyll and Hyde. So hopefully, with the addition of portal players like this that bring experience, like Cameron Olds, I think Mark Stoops is looking to finally get over the hump and not be so much Jekyll and Hyde. So I like this get as far as the defensive front for the Kentucky Wildcats.
Cameron Olds with 2 stops in the MAC, 1 at Buffalo, and then at Kent State just this past season at DN for the Golden Flashes. 42 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss. He had 6 sacks and a pick, and now he's stepping up to the big time with the Wildcats at Kentucky. Now we've got some rumblings, and a quarterback that you had mentioned earlier when talking about the Bo Pribula news, Fernando Mendoza. He also could be on the move as well.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of probably the top QB that remains. We've seen that over the last week or so as the portal opened, the QB position has really, as far as NIL and so forth, has been one of the highly touted positions. Teams looking to gain a QB, whether it be their starter, like we've seen at other schools, or looking to create a little bit of competition, like at places like Ole Miss, who already have 2 guys on board, but looking to maybe add a third for some depth. Fernando Mendoza is, like I said, probably one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback remaining on the board. We've heard some rumblings. He's already made visits to Indiana, Mizzou. Obviously, we believe that Mizzou is going to be no longer in the mix, obviously, with the commitment of Pribula. Mendoza is looking for a home to start. So we believe that while he's visited and taken time and Mizzou is still in contact, we don't believe from what we're hearing that Mizzou will longer be in the running, considering their commitment with the quarterback position. It really seems that from what we're hearing that the 2 programs, obviously, Georgia has been in the mix from the jump since when Fernando Mendoza hit the portal. They still remain strongly. Obviously, they're looking at their quarterback situation as they prepare, for the playoffs. Doing it without Carson Beck and so forth. The Georgia Bulldogs, Kirby Smart, are definitely looking for an experienced quarterback, and Mendoza has definitely proven that track record during his time at Cal. Another name that we're hearing, obviously, that has ties with Mendoza and could very well be another front runner is UCLA. They are at the top. A lot of people were talking about now, if you don't know anything about Fernando Mendoza, he is a Miami native. A lot of people thought that maybe Miami would be in the mix, but what we're hearing that despite his hometown roots to Miami hasn't really been in the mix and won't be in the mix. So we're thinking that Georgia, UCLA, possibly Indiana, that will be an interesting recruitment to watch over this dead period, how that transitions. But those are the top 3 schools right now that we're hearing. Obviously, his frame at 6'5", 225. He's the 3rd leading passer in the ACC, throwing for 3,004 yards, 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions over 11 games. I think, like I said, what he brings and what's so valuable about him, not only his production, is this experience he brings. He's a well-known starter, so obviously he would have no a problem adjusting. I guess he's 19 starts over 2 seasons. So again, Fernando Mendoza, it looks like Mizzou is pretty much out of the mix. So IU, watch for them to come in, but we're thinking Georgia and UCLA. Now there are a few rumblings that a very slim possibility, like we've been hearing, just because players go into the portal doesn't necessarily mean that they will stay there. There's very, very, very slim rumblings that there's a possibility that Fernando Mendoza could come back to Cal. But again, we don't believe that to be the case. We believe that it's going to come down to Georgia and UCLA as the two front runners. So we're hearing that he's nearing a decision. So don't be surprised if that comes within the next couple days.
As you mentioned, Leanne, Fernando Mendoza from Miami. And of course, it was last offseason that Miami pulled in what turned out to be the best quarterback in the transfer portal in Cam Ward. They went all out on Cam Ward, pretty much forgot everybody else. And Cam Ward had declared at one point last offseason for the NFL draft, and it looked like Miami was hung out to dry, and they were able to up the offer and get Cam Ward to take himself out of the draft in time to hit the deadline and get their man. I'm understanding over the last few days that Miami went really hard, similar to the Cam Ward situation last year, for John Mateer, the Washington State quarterback, who ended up committing and signing with Oklahoma. So Miami looking for a quarterback, certainly, because otherwise they're going to be inexperienced there with Emory Williams, the backup to Cam Ward. And again, Fernando Mendoza is a guy that they should be familiar with because they had to scout him when they played Cal and almost lost that game. And Mendoza put up a ton of points, I think a 38-35 Miami win there. So he was pretty impressive in that game. He's definitely a runner, a guy that plays outside the pocket. Leanne, I got to say.
Just going back before we wrap up on Mendoza, we mentioned IU, and people are kind of like, well, why would IU be a stop for him? Like what we're seeing, a lot of these high-profile quarterbacks with a lot of experience, they're looking to start. They're not looking to back. So, IU also, we know that their quarterback is fixing to hit the transfer portal. So they're definitely going to be in need of a quarterback. So that's also why Mendoza could be considering a place like IU. Like I said, another experienced guy. A lot of these quarterbacks are looking to go, not be the backup or be the competition guy. They're going to be a starter. And especially with the NIL deal, Indiana could come with the late pool. So again, like I said, that's going to be an interesting one to watch. But again, whoever gets Fernando Mendoza getting a real gem, not only is he productive, but an experienced starter that really could overhaul a team in a short amount of time.
Now comes Leanne's favorite time of the show each and every day. It's the Fluff Bothwell update. And I think we really need to hustle, Leanne, before Bothwell signs with somebody. And we need to go out and get ourselves a sponsorship for Fluff, because there's got to be something there with, I don't know, Charmin or somebody to be able to get a transfer portal update sponsorship there. But Fluff Bothwell, there's more rumblings with him, and you've got the latest.
There are more rumblings. Of course, he spent the last weekend in the SIP. He started out with Starkville, had a very strong visit there. They were making a late push. We were hearing before he even left Starkville, but he did arrive at Oxford yesterday. That visit, we're hearing, is going really well. I know a lot of Ole Miss fans kind of hit the panic button when they don't hear a lot about a particular recruitment. But for me, that's a good assurance that things are going well. Lane Kiffin, Kevin Smith, of course, our running backs coach, doing a strong job. When you tend not to hear too many things going on, it's literally it's more of a positive thing. So we like what we're hearing from the Ole Miss camp as far as the way the visit and everything's going. But again, keeping it close to the vest, I don't mind, because that means good things are happening, brewing. What we're hearing is it looks like he is close to a decision, and we're hearing that possibly he will be making somebody's team, whether it be a Mississippi State Bulldog or an Ole Miss Rebels, Christmas very, very merry. So that's what we're hearing so far out of Fluff Bothwell, that his decision is nearing, and it looks like it's going to be a Christmas Day celebration for possibly the Mississippi State Bulldogs or the Ole Miss Rebels.
The latest, everyone, just on the street here in the last few minutes, courtesy the 247 Sports Transfer Portal feed, former Western Kentucky quarterback Caden Veltkamp. He is going to FAU. 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns with Western Kentucky last year. Ex-James Madison offensive lineman Tyshawn Wyatt. He is going to make some visits, including Houston and also Virginia over the weekend. And we've got a couple transfer portal additions that just came down. Defensive lineman from Tennessee, Jason Jenkins. Obviously, they wrapped up their season on Saturday night. He's in the portal, made 2 sacks this season. Also a Maryland D lineman taking to the portal as well in Levon Johnson. And then this is a pretty big transfer portal decision made here by Washington State defensive back Adrian Wilson, who was a starter there with Wazoo, 47 tackles as a redshirt freshman, and he is going to play for playoff-bound Arizona State. Leanne, so we've got our buddy Will, Notre Dame fan, very happy about the Irish moving on to play Georgia. And he wants to know about the Branch brothers, and I know that you had an update on their visits yesterday.
Well, yes, we did, and you must have read my mind, Will, because I was thinking of whether or not to bring it up. But again, we've heard on Zachariah Branch, not so much on Zion. Obviously, the brothers were at Arizona State, so Arizona State is making a late push. Some other schools that we're hearing, obviously, to watch in would be Georgia. Georgia definitely making a push for those. So that's really where we are on the updates. We're hearing that they may be close to a decision, but again, this might be a recruitment that kind of extends past that January 1st when these two can make some more visits. But again, Georgia, Arizona State, what we're hearing, Will, are the schools to watch, especially for Zachariah Branch. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a commitment within the next few days, but if there's not, I do expect the brothers to extend and maybe take a few more visits after January 1st when they are allowed to, again, when the dead period is lifted. But that's what we're hearing so far. Not any new news as far as Branch, but are nearing a decision, like I said. But again, Arizona State, great visit there. A lot of ties there, but also Georgia's in the mix as well.
Our guy, Ryan Burns, who's appeared here at the Voice of College Football a number of times, 247 sports writer at Minnesota, breaking the news that so Logan Loya is a really fine possession wide receiver at UCLA, caught more than 100 passes for the Bruins, and he will play his last season of eligibility at the University of Minnesota, moving from what used to be Pac-12 school, but now it's the Big Ten to Big Ten move, UCLA to Minnesota. Leanne, where else do we stand? Anything else we need to hit on today?
Well, I don't. Oh, really quickly before I see Keith's question about Colorado looking for any offensive linemen. They should be. Any team should always be looking offensive linemen. Keith, if you haven't tuned in, you've probably seen me on a soapbox several times talk about the importance of getting the big guys up front. They don't get enough credit. We can go over some of the guys that are out there. Appalachian State, Joshua Daniel, he's a great defensive lineman. One of the offensive linemen to look at. I don't know if Colorado's interested, but man, they very well could be. We talked about him yesterday on the show. Ethan Anoa, he was at FSU this weekend, also Iowa, A&M, Ohio State. He's a 6'6" gem out of Rice in Houston. He's another offensive lineman to look. Now, when we're talking about high prize possession offensive tackles, we mentioned him yesterday. Washington State. Now, this is a guy with a big NIL, but man, he's got big prowess to go with it. Sorry, as I'm going to say his name again, Falali Fiome. He missed for the first 3 games due to injury, but he's benched, got into action. Bama. A lot of people are looking after him. These are some of the top offensive guys that we mentioned yesterday that are still on the market. I wouldn't be surprised if Dion were to go after that. But yes, I haven't heard anything specifically about linemen as far as Colorado. But like I said, the big addition of Jaheim Otis, obviously coveted lineman that Colorado was able to get. So I expect that Dion will continue to do that. But those are just some of the names here on Voice of College Football from our portal show that we're really looking at as far as a lineman that would be prize picks out of the portal. Going back to what Mark was saying about Texas A&M is on a roll looking to vamp up and beef up that defense down in College Station, looking to to make some moves and continue to build that roster. And they definitely, if anyone has money to spend, it's the alumni in College Station and those Aggies. This morning, the Aggies add 2 fellow SEC guys, both at the edge position. First, J.J. Sears, former Florida edge, 6'5". He's going to have 2 years of eligibility. They've added him to the roster. And then also another big body guy, really physical, out of Georgia, former Georgia edge, Samuel Mpemba. He's got 3 years left of eligibility. He was a top 50 recruit coming out of that 2023 cycle. So I think that these are 2 really strong physical guys that Texas A&M and Mike Elko is looking to really beef up, their defensive unit and arsenal. I think these are great picks. What I like about these guys, obviously, it's always a plus when you can add guys who have conference experience. And I think adding a Georgia, Florida edge, both combinations. A lot of times you don't see this, that you're going to get back-to-back positions, especially out of the same conference. So I think this is a big get for Mike Elko heading down to College Station, being able to build on these guys. Another thing that we don't talk a lot about, and I think we've seen more this year versus last year, is we see that not only are programs being a little bit more selective, especially we see it here in the SEC, but they're also not afraid to go after guys who have 2 and 3 years of eligibility. Because now we see the focus not just shifting on the NIL, but also the development process. A lot of these times I say, in the SEC, one of the key components being able to go to the long haul market I've talked about is building depth. And I think now we're seeing that in this season, of course, you're going for your top guys like a Jaham Otis, like, some other guys that we know have 2 years of eligibility, but more than likely they're going to play for you for 1 year and they're going to head to the NFL. But we see also a lot of teams this year, I think more so than last year, taking on and investing in a lot of guys where they can develop, like a J.J. Sears with 2 years of eligibility, like a Mpemba with 3 years of eligibility, because they can build their team. And I think that also they're hoping that, which I have to say, Lane Kiffin has done a really great job at Ole Miss of being able to retain not only his current roster, but also a lot of his transfers from hitting the NFL earlier, even hitting the portal. So again, I think Mike Elko is doing a really good job adding not 1, but 2 quality edges that have a lot of upside and that they can really build upon over in College Station in Searcy and Memba.
Especially folks during the holidays, you got to keep up with us. So the Ole Miss show typically on Wednesday, of course, that's supposed to be some kind of special day, I think, on Wednesday. I didn't check the calendar. But anyway, is going to be moved to 1 p.m. So we are just about 30 minutes away from our Ole Miss show on the Ole Miss channel, 1 p.m. Eastern time, noon Central, for you Ole Miss fans in Mississippi. The SIP. I got to get used to saying that. The SIP. Okay.
Yeah, the SIP. So that's really kind of all that I have for our portal update, our pre-portal update. Like I said, running now, we're officially on that dead period. Of course, we won't be talking about visits and all that until January 5th. First, there are some recruits that we've talked about that schedule their visits, after the 1st. So we'll see a lot more movement. But again, business will go on as usual as far as communication. There will be plenty of that through the holidays. Of course, if we will be traveling, celebrating the holidays. But if we have any breaking news, big commitments, we will try to definitely get on here. Like I said, Fluff Backwell looking to make that Christmas commitment. We're saying either an Ole Miss Rebel or a Mississippi State Bulldog. Again, a lot of exciting things happen. Thank you guys for being here. Supporting the Voice of College Football and all our great shows. Like I said, we have a lot of content, not even whether you're an SEC fan, ACC fan coming up. So make sure to check that out, especially with heading into the next round of the college football playoffs. So thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully we will see you soon.